I'm back. I'm happy to be back. And we got some great pieces, and we just move on. And I let my actions in my game speak for itself like I planned on doing. Just needed a pause.
Mr. Chris Broussard joining us now. This has been a head-scratcher for you, Broussard. Kyrie Irving, how he's going to fit in once he returns. What do you expect the Nets to look like tonight when you got Kyrie, KD, James Harden all on the floor all at the same time for the first time?
Jenna, I am so excited. I can't wait. I'm beside myself. I haven't been this excited to see a trio on the floor since LeBron, D. Wade, and Chris Bosh, and I was at their first game in Boston. They looked horrible. They looked terrible. They scored 80 points. They lost. And it was a lot of my turn, your turn. Nick probably remembers that game. It was D. Wade's turn, LeBron's turn, Bosh's turn. They were over-deferring to one another to make it fit. And that happens a lot of times when three stars get on the floor together for the first time. So you may see some of that. I think that Steve Nash will stagger the minute, other than the start of the game, obviously, and the end of the game. I think you'll see a lot of staggered minutes for Harden and Kyrie with one of them on the floor where the other one's on the bench. When they're on the floor together, ideally, I think it should look like this. James Harden is your point guard. He's the best, as good as Kyrie is as a point guard. Harden is the best playmaker and passer on that squad. He should be the point. Kyrie should be the 2, and then obviously KD does his thing. I don't think it'll necessarily go like that. I think there'll be a lot of overlap. I think both Kyrie and Harden will almost share the duties of bringing the ball up. And I'm interested to see how they move, those two move or work without the ball in their hands. Kyrie's obviously done it with LeBron, so he can do it, and he's a little more used to it. Harden typically in Houston, when he was off the ball, he was standing somewhere between the hash mark and half court, twiddling his thumbs. So I want to see him involved in the play when he doesn't have the ball, at the very least, spotting up for three-pointers at the very least. But I want to see what he does and Kyrie does when they don't have the basketball. Cleveland actually, though they're 6 and 7, is a good defensive team, second in the league right now on that end of the floor. But I think the Nets, despite the growing pains, will be able to overcome and win.
Yeah, I think there's two conversations here. There's one, what do they look like tonight, and what do they also look like tomorrow? Look at his press conference and how he responded. So tonight, there's really no expectations because of what you said, Chris. You talked about the big three in Miami and how it was like it's your turn, their turn, whatever. I think that this team is going to take time for them to look like a champion. Right now, everything is they're overachieving. Everything right now they're exceeding expectation. You're going off of muscle memory when you look at KD and also James Harden. Those guys played together. They're familiar with each other on the court. Now you insert Kyrie. That's going to take time. Now tomorrow, I think the big question is, where will Kyrie be mentally? Now, we talked about this. Now, I think this is a guy who's really going through an identity challenge. I don't think it's anything from a mental health standpoint. I literally think it's a guy that's like, who am I today? Do I really love the game that much where I want to continue to sacrifice all my time and put in all the work that it takes to be an elite player? This is a dude that's passionate about other things. This is a dude who's super spiritual right now. So we got to consider that when we have this conversation about the Brooklyn Nets. I do think they have the perfect guys around him, that will be able to guide him along this journey the next couple of months while he figures it out. I say that because James Harden, someone close to James Harden told me, look, James Harden went to the organization and said, don't trade me to Brooklyn if Kyrie's not going to be there. James Harden stood on the table and said, I only want to come if all three of us play together. So when we talk about this sacrifice and we talk about this chemistry, this is a group of men who sat down and said, we know we have to sacrifice. We know what we got to do to get to the next level and to become a champion in the NBA.
Yeah, and that sounds really good. And you guys are sick of me talking about, the other end of the court, the end of the court that determines champions, the end of the court. That's why the Lakers won the title last year.
That's all you got.
And, that's why. Well, it's half the game. And if you go through this century, you got a bunch of #1 defenses that won the title, you have one #1 offense that won the title, the 2017 Warriors, and they, by the way, were the #2 defense. But let's forget that side of the ball. Let's just say, listen, it's a weird year. The NBA's changed a lot of rules. Maybe they'll institute a make it, take it rule, and that'll really, really help the Nets. So let's just forget the defensive side of the basketball entirely. Yeah, make it, take it, they would be deadly. Totally dynamic.
That's the greatest take you've ever had on television.
Yeah, it'd be a dynamic. Broussard, I got a question for you. The best player on this team, without question, is Kevin Durant. Agreed? No doubt about it.
Agreed.
Right?
Although I think Harden's close. But I agree, it's KD.
Listen, Harden can be, but Durant for what he's accomplished and who you trust late in games, and you could argue, as of this morning, Inauguration Day 2021, that Durant's been the league MVP up to this point. There's some other people, but you could, if you have a ballot, I have a fake one. If you put Durant first, no one would kill you about it. My concern on the offensive end is this, and I think they're going to be great offensively, but if we're going to focus on that end, Durant, because of his personality and because of his style, is the best player and the most likely to be marginalized. I don't think Harden will let himself be marginalized. Kyrie's game necessitates him having the ball and cooking. Durant, we saw him somewhat marginalized at times at Golden State, and he's not a vocal yell-at-you type of guy. And so is that at all for you a concern, that their best player is the one that is most likely early on to take the third banana roll, even though it certainly shouldn't be that way?
Now, I hear what you're saying, because the other guys, two guys, are going to have the ball in their hands. We even saw it when early in the season, Kyrie was dictating everything, and KD was just catching and shooting and, you know, obviously a couple dribble shot. But look, he may not get the most shots, but he will be the most efficient. And I also think what Brandon said was important about the person close to Harden telling him Harden wanted to play with Kyrie. That tells me Harden is willing to step back. Now, again, I think he should be the point guard. I really do. He is a tremendous point guard. He's a tremendous passer. And I think in a perfect world, Kevin Durant would be the top scorer, Kyrie would be the second leading scorer, and Harden would be third, still getting you 24, 25 points a game. It's hard to imagine three guys scoring that many points, 25 points a night. But I think Harden is willing to just be a playmaker. He's still going to get his points, but that's what has to happen. And they're smart enough, Nick, to know KD is our best player. I do think both of those guys understand the importance of KD and that he's got to be scoring close to 30 points for them to be at their best.
Really quickly here, Nick, you talk about being our resident general manager, and you think just like a general manager. You're just thinking analytically, and you're also looking at the history of the game. You have to stop it. You got to think about mindset. You got to think about how are these guys wired. There was a point in the last game against the Bucks where I said, okay, these guys have it. Kevin Durant was sitting on the perimeter on the right side. You had James Harden bringing the ball up, dribbling between his legs. James Harden was looking at KD like, are you going to move? I'm trying to give you the ball. And what did you see Kevin Durant do? He waved them off. He said, keep the ball. So when you talk about these guys sacrificing, you got to think about that first. That was a real telling moment for me, because I saw Kevin Durant saying, I know you know that I'm the #1 guy. You want to give it to me, but take it and go do your thing.
So here's what I think, Broussard. I'm going to throw it to you in a second. Tonight is Kyrie's night. Kyrie hasn't been back in Cleveland since his first game with the Celtics. So rather than switching off possessions, I think both Harden and Durant are like, you know what? You cook tonight. This is your Cleveland homecoming. You need to show the world that you're rested and ready to go. Also, I think Durant takes a step back for maybe the entire regular season. So I think Nick is right, where his personality is more to I don't know, willing to sacrifice. But come finals time, if they make the finals, he's the finals MVP. He's the one that will step up where Harden might take a backseat, where Harden might feel the pressure. I feel like Durant's time is in the finals, and he knows it, and he's going to be the leader who says, all right, you know what, tonight, Kyrie, you cook. Harden, you got to get used to sort of, Brooklyn, you cook now, and he's willing to sort of bide his time until the playoffs.
Look, I like your idea about Kyrie shining tonight, those two trying to get him involved. I mean, that would be cute. That would be nice. I don't know if it happens, but that would be something nice. I don't think you can have KD step back the entire regular season and then turn it on in the playoffs. They've got to get used to playing with one another. That's why we've seen big threes that don't win it in their first season. So I think they have to play in the regular season how they're going to play in the playoffs. And so I don't see that. I think Durant's got to be Durant. Look, Harden and Kyrie, I think, are stronger personalities than him. But he is the best player, and he's going to have to play like the best player if this thing is going to work.